Now that Unchained is like winning events, I figured it's time I actually learn the deck. And lucky for me, this guy Zachariah Butler had just written an article on TCG Player about it. So I figured I would read this to get my start of understanding what the cards do, what you're supposed to play to counter them, and then I might watch some replays or something on the channel of the deck too. So if you have replays and you're good with the deck, hit me up and maybe I'll watch them on the channel and talk about them. But that aside, I'm gonna read this article and see what all information I could pick up about this deck before I have to play against it at my next locals. So what does the deck do? Which that's the main thing I want to learn is what it does. If you're not familiar with the premise of the Unchained deck, I know they pop stuff to like get going. That's about it. You're going to see them destroy their stuff a lot. The Unchained Twin monster summons another Unchained from hand or deck whenever they're destroyed. And the new Unchained Soul monsters from Dual Nexus special themselves by destroying your cards. It's a very obvious synergy, and it's as simple as it is effective. Unchained Soul of Sharava is the most powerful of the new two main deck souls, setting an Unchained spell or trap directly from your deck whenever it hits the grave, even if it's sent for the cost of a card or detached from an XYZ material. I agree, that card is nuts. That seems like it's a problem. You'll usually be setting Abominable Chamber of the Unchained, which summons a monster from your hand or grave, or Escape from the Unchained, which destroys an Unchained monster you control and one other card on the field. And remember, when the traps are destroyed, they both have an effect to summon an Unchained from the deck. Holy. So that's really strong, yeah. You've also got Abomination's Prison. That's the Searcher, adding yet another layer of consistency to the deck. Prison's primary effect is to search another Unchained card from deck to hand, but if it's destroyed, it summons an Unchained for free. Unchained Soul Lord of Yama is a Link 2 that gets any Unchained monster to your hand on summon. While it's in the graveyard and another fiend's destroyed, you can banish it to special a fiend from your hand or graveyard, and if you want to, destroy a card you control, which would trigger another Unchained effect. Then there's the deck's main disruption tool, Unchained Soul of Rage. That's another Link 2. You can combine this Link 2 with one of your opponent's special monsters to summon any Dark Link you want. Unchained Soul of Anguish shares the same effect, except it can take any opposing monster, and it's not a quick effect. Even though it's not part of the Unchained theme, DDD Wave High King Caesar is the other piece of the end field you need to be aware of. This rank 6 can detach a material to stop any spell, trap, or monster effect that would special summon. That's great because it'll trigger the Unchained Soul of Shurvara and let you set another Unchained card from your deck. So making him is going to provide you an interruption with potential follow-up. The typical end board for Unchained is going to include the Link 2 and that rank 6 and some set cards. So you'll have to play through a few layers of interruption. It's a lot like Dragon Link. Their turn 1 may not be especially impressive, but the following turns are where the deck shines since destroying their cards doesn't really do anything, and chances are high that your hand traps won't help much. So what can you do against Unchained's plays? This is the next part that we're pretty excited for. Getting a base understanding of how the deck works and then seeing what people think might beat it. Cards like Veiler, Ash, and Deck Lockdown can help slow down the opponent enough to a point where they can't summon the DDD or their Soul of Rage, giving you an ample opportunity to push through their setup. If you're going to take that approach, dropping a negation like Ash on Yama will be key, as they're typically a big choke point for the deck. Without Yama getting whatever combo piece they need, they can flounder. So if this card's special, you add an Unchained from deck to hand. Is this where you're supposed to Veiler Imperm then? Because he said to Ash it, but I don't know if that's what you Ash. But Veiler Imperm seem right on this card. You can also use like DD Crow to banish the Shama from Grave when they're working a special from Graveyard too. Just make sure you use the Crow before they actually use the effect, or they're still going to destroy. Nib fits the same type of tactic. You'll want to activate its effect once your opponent has 2 level 6 Unchains on the field, since that's when they're ready to commit to the DDD Wave King, and their field is the most vulnerable. Cards like Book of Moon and Eclipse are fantastic, helping keep the DDD Wave King High Caesar from stopping your effects, as well as preventing Unchained Soul of Rage from snatching up your monster for a Link summon. How does that? Oh, because I thought Rage took 2 Links, but it makes sense now. Since it targets a face-up special, you could chain the book to set it, and they won't take it, I guess. Which forces their interrupt, but it turns it into a different interrupt. You know what I mean? Like if I'm my opponent and I'm like, yo, I want to use Soul of Rage to link away this problem card, and I try to do it, and you chain Book of Moon, I still out of the problem card, and I got a Book of Moon out of your hand. I might not get whatever link I was going to go into, but I replaced that with the hand rip. The Bestial monsters are also solid. Banishing the Yama is amazing for weakening the Unchained player's follow-up turns, but it's mostly that Druid Swarm can be the real pain, since its non-destruction monster removal won't trigger the effects of their Unchained. That's interesting, actually. So yeah, your Bestial Druid Swarm will be able to check the Yama and Grave from being able to replace itself, but also be able to threaten pressure on the board. Because you could like punch over an interaction. Say you punch over like the Link 2, and then you can link away and use its effect to out the Exe. So that card on its own does seem like it would do a lot. Or be like Jesse and just take the opponent's stuff. Cards like Change of Heart, Triple Tactic Talents, and Marionette Might. That's why this card is seeing play. Cool. Are all great since they simply take the card that would be an issue, and in doing so, remove it as a threat. When you combine these options with cards like Thrust, suddenly you've got a good number of high-impact tech options to choose from. And so, if you guys don't know what Marionette Might does, I think it's you can discard this card to the graveyard, take a face-up Fiend or something. I don't want to click it and change the website. Change the tab. Oh, well, I'm doing it. You discard this card, take a Fiend or Zombie your opponent controls. I don't think there's any zombies in the metagame we're worried about, but what can you do to stop Unchained from playing? You can also take preventative measures instead of being reactive. There are a few cards to highlight for this strategy, namely Gravekeeper's Inscription. At the start of your main phase 1, apply one of the following effects until the end of your opponent's turn. Neither player can activate card effects in the graveyard, neither player can banish from grave, neither player can special from grave. So if you were to go first and activate this, they're probably not playing on their turn. Same with Dweller. It seems like a lot of these cards trigger in grave. You're going to use Inscription's first effect, stopping graveyard effects from being activated, which means Unchained just cannot do anything they'd like to. It's also pretty solid going second, which is nice, since often cards like this are only good when you go first. I don't know if I'm putting Inscription in going second. Maybe, but I don't see that happening. Another one's Abyss Dweller. Any deck that can reasonably summon it is in a much better position than it was previously in the metagame. Dweller still is going to be awkward to make turn 0, I think, because like Cash isn't necessarily dead. It's not great against them. He was saying it's good against Dragon Link, which is important to know. Like games 2 and 3, I feel like Dweller will definitely be nuts. I don't know how great it is going to be going first. If this is the most represented deck, then maybe we're putting it on the M board again. The last Floodgate that I want to mention is ones that I highlighted earlier, Deck Lockdown, which says neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand except by drawing. Also, they can't summon from the main deck. So that, I guess, stops their deck. This old school continuous spell is an absolute godsend in the Unchained matchup, since they can't search and they can't special from deck. There might be more options, but so far those are the best Floodgate effects I've found. Cards like There Can Be Only One and Gozen are also viable, but you're going to have to prepare for stuff like Lightning Storm and Cosmic, which is also good in the matchup since you can banish their Unchained stuff. So yeah, Cosmic seems cool. So, is that... According to this, since you can banish the Unchained player's spells and traps when they target them and cut them off from not only their summon effect, but also deprive them of the possible interruptions on the following turn. So if my opponent goes set the trap, and I go activate the level 6 in hand target trap, I could chain Cosmic, get rid of the resource, and now the card in hand has used its effect and is dead. One small thing I've noticed is that cards like Dark Ruler and Evenly tend to be weak against Unchained. Evenly sounds like it would be good. They don't put up an Omni and their cards want to be destroyed. And that's because the Escape of the Unchained can remove resources from the field, and then they can use Yama and the... That makes sense. So, like, you go battle flip the Evenly, they would chain the Unchained Trap to pop one of their cards. I think that's what this does. Yeah, so you would, like, chain that, pop your guy, pop Evenly, and then on the Evenly is going to resolve. Oh, but if you popped Evenly, you'd have no cards. Does this have to pop an opponent's card? Yeah, so you would pop 2 of your own cards. Evenly would resolve, putting you down to 1, and then on a new chain, the cards you destroyed would both trigger, and I think that Link triggers. Yeah, so then you would just kind of start comboing on your opponent's turn. Overall, the game plan when you're up against Unchained needs to be about focusing on what interactions you can or cannot handle, and then playing appropriately from there. It's an extremely new strategy for most of us to face on a serious competitive level, so make sure to learn from your mistakes. They will happen. And sweet, so Shout out Zachariah Butler for the article. I feel like I just putting me through the ringer, having to think a little bit, definitely helped me understand the deck a little bit better. You guys should swing over to TCG Player, support this dude if you fuck with them, and if you'd rather hear me read articles than have to read them yourself, hit subscribe. Thank you for watching.